After nearly a week of fuel protests that brought disruption to roads, supply chains and communities across Clare and the rest of the country, services are beginning their return to normality. But with hundreds of service stations running dry and a new €505 million government support package now on the table, we're sure the debate is far from over. Meanwhile, Retail Excellence Ireland had warned that retail trade fell by up to 50% in some areas due to the fuel blockades, which caused severe disruption across the country. The largest body representing Ireland's retail industry had called for the blockades to end and for meaningful engagement between all parties and the government to begin without delay. So joining us on this morning in studio, the Kilkee farmer, Kevin Hassett, who of course former local and general election candidate, who attended the protests in Clare. On the line we've Cathal of C&C Executive Travel, one of the coordinators of the demonstrations, and also in studio alongside Kevin is John O'Connor, retailers of Ennis Chairperson and the owner of Custy's Music Shop. And you're all very welcome to the programme. And Cathal, I might start with yourself and the announcement of those measures by the government, which, as people have been hearing in our news bulletins, Clare's Minister of State Timmy Dooley saying will help those burdened most by the fuel increases. Do you see this as a satisfactory result and indeed a direct result of the protest? Do you see this as a successful near week of action?
No, not one bit. We left deflated last night from the roads. We accomplished something small, but we accomplished something big, that we actually opened up people's eyes to the government of Ireland at the minute. We spent day and night there for 7 days out, where I can hardly talk today, so sorry if I'm hoarse on the radio because I can hardly talk. It opened up people's eyes. We started off with a fuel demonstration on Tuesday morning, and I think it grew legs into something totally different, because it opened up the people of Ireland's eyes on the government of Ireland at the minute, what they think of the Irish people. Like, we were out there for fuel for the farmers, the hauliers, the forestry men, the busmen, the laymen, every man. We wanted the fuel cap, the price of fuel. Then the government turned on us by sending in guards, pulling lads out of tractors. There was friends of ours who went to Galway. They came home with battered and bruised for standing up with their arms to hold the were beating them with buttons.
But even, sorry, Cathal, to cut across, but even aside from that latter point you're making, I mean, like, the government and the Gardaí had to respond at some point. The country was practically brought to its knees. There was hundreds of service stations without fuel. Schools were back today. Already there was chaos with people struggling to get to work, to hospital appointments and other things like that. They couldn't let it continue.
Why didn't they do something about it last week before this ever started in? This has been going on with 2 weeks before anyone went on the roads. Why didn't they let the people that were speaking for the protesters into the door last Friday? Why didn't they do it? There's so many.
They would say, Cathal, they didn't let. It was about dealing with the legitimate representative bodies that they have always dealt with. That with the protesters, there was no one or two official leaders or representatives. They were disparate. People involved in the protests in Dublin had no control over what was happening down at Whitegate and Cork. So who exactly were they supposed to invite in?
They sent up four people to the door, and they closed the door.
Yeah, but did those four people? No. Hang on a sec. No, you made a point. I have to counteract it. Yeah. Those four people. Could it be said they represented every single protester at all the protests around the country?
You could, because we backed them because we went out on the road. We backed them. If we got a phone call from them and said they were happy with what the Dáil said, they went in and spoke to them. There wouldn't have been a car on the road Friday evening. But the Dáil slapped us in the face, closed the door on their faces. It slapped the face of every man, woman and child that was on the roads protesting. For the Irish people, I'll let you mind. We were protesting for everybody. And the government came around yesterday evening at 6 o'clock and made that announcement. The hauliers, the diesel men, like 2.4 cent off a green diesel. What are they thinking? 10 cent off a diesel. It's gone up again today anyway. So whatever they did yesterday, it's just gone.
There will also, Cathal, be direct fuel payments. Farmers, agricultural contractors will get those, as well as hauliers, bus operators. The carbon tax increases. I know carbon tax has been a big issue as well. They've been put back until October's budget.
Yes, we'll see now. I hope to God we walked away yesterday evening with the hope that the government will be collapsed by tomorrow evening. If the government, because there's lots more, it's down to the healthcare. This has opened up a massive can of worms on the Irish government. The whole lot of these charges. Look at just if you ran the government like a business, they wouldn't last a month because the way they waste money on stuff. This is just driving the Irish people now to see what the government are doing. They're going to take the government apart piece by piece and show the government up for what they are.
And I want to bring in the other guest call, but I do want to return to this point because I think you've touched on something important, which is maybe a wider dissatisfaction with the government out there. But Kevin Hassett, the government would say, look, you can argue about how long it took them to respond to this. And maybe they should have responded sooner and there wouldn't have been a need for the protests in terms of measures to help people, and that's on top of the €250 million in measures they announced some time back. But they would say over the last number of weeks they have announced €750 million plus in measures to help people, and with the possibility of more come July. What would you say to that?
Thanks, Alan, for having us on this morning. Yes, 750 million, it's a drop in the ocean, Alan. This is the problem.
It's a significant amount of money.
No, sorry, no, we're led to believe that this country is awash with money and that the country is going so well, but there's an awful cohort of people here, and what we can see from the protest, who's affected, the calibre of people that was on this protest, your top business people from every walk of life in Clare participating in this protest, And this will show you the anger, Ellen, that's out there, and that's what's driving the people.
Okay, in terms of business people, we have one here, John O'Connor. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of business people who fully. The Sunday Independent Ireland Thinks poll showed 56% of the 1,000 voters polled supported the protest. 38% were not in favour. But John, you're in to give your thoughts on it, but also that point Retail Excellence Ireland was making, that retail trade fell by up to 50%. Give us a sense of how your business has been since the protest began, and were you supportive of what was happening, or generally supportive but maybe not in the way it went with fuel blockades and so on?
I suppose, look, on a personal note, I'd be very supportive of what's happened to an extent. I'd support what people did, because I think at the end of the day, a government is there to rule, but a government as well go in, they get elected, by being full of pious platitudes and promises, and the minute they get in, the robe of those promises divested, and then the control kind of robe is put on. And that's what government do, I suppose, to an extent. But I think the point made is the arrogance of a government in relation to what's been happening to these people. Because remember, the truckers and these people who deliver, these are the lifeblood of society here. If they fail, we fail as a society. Now, that said, I appreciated their efforts in what they did, and I'm glad it stopped when it stopped, because, as I said to Kevin earlier on, you have to know when to start the protest, and you definitely have to know when to end it.
And it looks like it has ended. Obviously, there's still bits and pieces going on following the government announcement, although, as we heard from Cathal, there's a level of dissatisfaction there. What kind of impact did you notice over the past week with your business? Were people struggling to get into town from?
People were definitely struggling, and people were making a decision. I suppose when there's doubt and when there's fear in a society, people vote with their feet and stay where they are, and they definitely vote with their hands, not digging deep into the pockets to spend. And we've noticed that in our shop. Our kind of business would be down probably about 30%. Now, we were lucky in a sense that we have tourists coming in again. Now, we're lucky in that sense because we have a tourist kind of industry this time of the year, but definitely you'd know at the end of the day the takings are seriously down because of this. And again, it's the whole idea. Footfall causes stress. Stress causes people not to spend. So,
and Cathal, just on what John is saying, I know you're clearly not happy or fully satisfied with what the government has announced in the measures that were announced yesterday, but in a way, when you hear a business owner like John and the impact that the last week or so has had on his business, do you think can you see why some business owners will be happy that things have kind of wound down now, that if it gone on any longer, they would have been severely put to the pin of their collar?
I can understand that 100%, but I know hauliers, I know contractors today that have put their business into liquidation and have 30 and 40 men working for them because of the fuel, diesel prices. They didn't take enough of it. It's all over the Ireland. This is impacting. I know some businesses got slandered for it. I know there's some businesses in Ennis. Willow rang me yesterday. It's not fair. They're getting calls because they stood up for their business as well, but we're standing up for everyone in Ireland. This protest has only paused. These things have paused. We'll see what the government are made of now before Tuesday evening. And we'll be back on the roads again, I think, Wednesday morning, everybody needs to get out, including the farmers that are giving out at home about it. They need to pull out their tractors Wednesday morning, pull out their cars, pull out their Jeep and buses.
But can I ask you, what is likely to happen between now and then that would satisfy you? Given the government has made this announcement yesterday, and they have to, and in certain aspects of that, they have to tic-tac with the European Union, because obviously they would have an input into how far they can go with some of the supports they give. They're not likely to, 24, 48 hours later announce even further measures.
Hopefully the government will be collapsed. We need to get them 3 men off the stand, because they're not doing their job right. They've forgotten about the Irish people, I think. I think they've kind of they've totally lost control of the government, I think, and there needs to be a new government formed. People will be very happy. This started off as a fuel process, as I said. Tuesday we were getting abuse on the roads. Wednesday it kind of went slowly, or kind of all way. When the government and the local TDs started talking on the radios, people started to realise, oh God, these fellas on the road are actually right. People sat down, they thought about it, they looked at it, they said, oh God, this is affecting us. The people at home sat down, I think, and they actually realised what the government are doing to Irish people.
But Cathal, isn't the appropriate way to get rid of a government to vote them out at the next election, not collapse them in the manner you're talking about?
It needs to be done. We stood up. We showed up the government. I think the government now needs to be reformed.
Okay, let me bring my guests in studio. Kevin, you can understand Cathal's frustration there. Clearly there's plenty of people frustrated with the government's response in terms of how they responded, in terms of how long it took them to respond. But, I mean, look, you've stood up for local and general election. You went about trying to make change and represent your concerns and people you know's concerns in the proper manner. I mean, surely, like, you would see the logic or the rationality, and if you want to get rid of this government, if you're unhappy with them, you have to wait until the next general election.
Well, Ellen, I suppose I sat in this seat, funnily enough, 2 odd years ago. We're halfway through this government, or hitting up on it, and I think the first word out of my mouth that time was, I came in to expose the corruption going on in this government, and it's still going on. And we're gone 2.5 years into it. I see it in West Clare. We've no job gone back since. There's no road fixed. We're nearly driving in the middle of the road coming over this day. This is what the taxes from the lorries and from the cars is supposed to improve, and we're not getting it. Same as Cathal has said, this is going to expose, it's wakening the people up to what's going on with this government. Clare is the poor party or the poor county going in all of this. Everyone can see what happened with the hospital here, and it went to Limerick, and that's it, and it's been accepted, and that's what's wrong with the people. They're accepting everything that's thrown at them. But in fairness now to this protest, it was a peaceful protest at all stages, and the people stood up and came together, and they're saying enough is enough.
But people have a right to legitimately protest. But do you think that, blockading critical infrastructure like the oil refinery, the country's only oil refinery at Whitegate, and blocking ports in Galway and places like that, so 6 million litres of diesel and petrol was sitting out at sea for a number of days, was going too far?
Well, we weren't involved in any of them now, but we'll say so. I suppose I can't.
But I suppose that goes back to my point that these protests, it wasn't a united, coherent thing. It was people who obviously had the same ideals, but one group in one county didn't have input or say into what another group were saying. John O'Connor, what do you make of what Cathal and Kevin are saying, and the suggestion that if they're not happy, if the government don't come back with something more to their satisfaction in the coming day or two, that the blockades, the protests could begin again, and you could see the impact you've seen at your business over the last week pick up again?
I think you have to look at the full situation here and be very cautious, because you have the support, Kevin, and Cathal have the support of people, 56%, okay? But I think that comes with a caveat, and the caveat is you can only go so far before that support is very ephemeral. It begins to dwindle. I think it's very important that the government, and I think you have pinpricked the bladder of arrogance of the government, The government are an arrogant crowd, okay, and it's taken this much for them to realise they have to do something positive. But that said, the government are in a situation where powers around the world are dictating what happens in our country. So Strait of Hormuz closed, it's double blockade this morning. The government can do nothing about that, okay, but they have to be open to sit down with your people, with Cathal's people, and thrash this out, because at the end of the day, we all suffer when truckers, when delivery people suffer as well, okay. It does have that domino effect on society in general. I wouldn't advocate going back again, okay, because you're biting your nose to spite your face kind of a scenario. I just say take a deep breath, okay, see what the government is, the arrogance, the supercilious tone, is it gone? If it is, you can sit down and talk decently with them.
Cathal, what do you make of what John is saying there, but also that point that you've had quite a lot of public support? I know you're not happy with the measures.
Brilliant.
I know you're not happy with the measures that have been announced, but you got a package, you got measures from the government that likely wouldn't have happened had these protests not happened. But
Exactly.
It is contingent upon public support, and if you go back again and we see more service stations running out of fuel, and particularly with all the schools back now as well, you may lose the real ace in your hand, the ace up your sleeve, which is the public support.
Yes, we did get up this morning. We did put the schools back. We did do a peaceful protest. But the peaceful protest we did last week opened up the Irish people's eyes on the government. It has opened up, as it was said there, it opened up the corruption in the government. And people can see it now. People of Ireland can see the corruption now. So the protest did work. It did work because it showed up the government for what they really are. They sent out people, they sent out the defence forces like to beat people off the roads. Like, this shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have come to this. We shouldn't have been on the roads. This could have all happened last week.
The defence forces, Jim O'Callaghan had said, they'd be put into use, but that never really happened.
The defence forces, they weren't really happened. Did you not see the social media, what they did to people? Pulling lead out of tractors and kicking them on the ground. Do you think that's right? No, it's not. That's not right. Like, there is other ways of doing it. Now, the Guardians, Síochána in Ennis were very, very respectful to us, but the threat was there. We were told they were coming to put us off the roads. I called the vote. We didn't want anyone getting hurt in Clare. It was a peaceful protest. So we decided to stand it down after this disgraceful package they put together for the farmers and stuff yesterday, and the taking 10 cent off of kerosene and 10 cent off of white diesel. We decided to stand down because we didn't want anyone getting hurt. We had young families.
Okay, and I can appreciate that, but just to finish, you're adamant that if the government don't come back with additional measures over the next day or two,
we need our independent parties and stuff now to vote no confidence in the government. A full shake-up of the government. We need the government to run like a proper business, not a willy-nilly business. Millions been lost here and there and everywhere. Like charging for buses in Limerick, there was hundreds of millions of buses bought in Limerick that they couldn't even charge them. The buses are parked up inside in sheds now. There's other stuff all over the country. I've been naming out stuff. There's millions being thrown away in this country every day of the week, and people don't even see it. Now people are starting to realise, if you go back over your phones and Google the waste of money in Ireland, I guarantee you a lot more than 500 that they gave us the other day. Yesterday. The government should have done this before. They should have helped our Irish people a lot more than what they have done, and the Irish people now are behind the people, the protesters and the people that have actually stood up to do it.
Okay,
now the government need to grow up here and get out now and talk properly and do something. And I know they have done something yesterday evening, but like 10 cents off of each and 2.4 cents for the contractors. Farmers are going to go out there now for their silage. Just to make an example of it now. They're going to go out now to cut silage for people, farmers. I've been farmers that don't charge their people maybe till the end of the year when the farmers are able to pay them. They're saying they can't do that now. Their prices are gone up so much they can't carry the cans. Like, if the contractors go out digging foundations for their houses.
I get the sense of your frustration, Cathal, and we're going to be joined by two members of government parties after the break, and I'll put what's been said to them, but we have to park that there for the moment. My thanks to Cathal O'Donoghue, to Kevin Hassett and to John O'Connor in studio.